I begin here because everything else depends on this. No man is free who cannot control himself. This is not a moral claim, it is a mechanical one. Freedom is not the ability to move. It is the ability to decide. If desire overrides intention, there is no agency, only reaction. Many people live with options, but without authority. They can choose between surfaces, but not between impulses. They confuse flexibility with freedom and motion with power. I do not. If I cannot regulate myself, then external control is inevitable. Something will decide for me: emotion, appetite, urgency, noise. This is not oppression, it is physics. Discipline is not imposed, it is installed. It is the internal alignment that removes the need for constant negotiation. When self-command is absent, the mind fragments. Every decision becomes heavy. Every delay becomes justified. Every impulse demands attention. This is not complexity, it is disorder. Self-command simplifies. It removes debate. It removes friction. It removes internal contradiction. I do not wait to feel aligned. I align. I do not ask what is easy. I ask what is correct. Control is not force, it is clarity applied consistently. Once command is established, behavior follows without struggle. This is why true freedom feels quiet. There is nothing to resist, nothing to argue with, nothing to escape from, only direction. Without self-command, power leaks. With it, everything consolidates. This is where autonomy begins and where all other forms of strength depend. Time does not respond to intention, it responds to pattern. This is where most people miscalculate. They believe effort is decisive, it is not. Duration is. Time magnifies what is repeated and erodes what is sporadic. Intensity creates sensation. Consistency creates consequence. This is why discipline matters. Not because it feels virtuous, but because it aligns behavior with the way time actually works. Time favors what can be sustained and exposes what cannot. Most ambitions fail, not because they are unrealistic, but because they are incompatible with repetition. They require enthusiasm instead of structure. Discipline removes dependency on mood. It transforms action from an emotional event into a stable process. This is how endurance is created, not through force, but through compatibility with time. Legacy is not memory, it is accumulation. It is what continues after motivation has expired. Time does not care what I planned, only what I maintained. This makes discipline impersonal and therefore reliable. It does not ask for belief, only compliance. I do not attempt to defeat time. I cooperate with it. I reduce volatility. I eliminate unnecessary variation. I choose patterns that can survive boredom, fatigue, silence. This is how strength compounds without announcement. Time is not an enemy, but it is unforgiving. It rewards alignment and punishes chaos. Discipline is the language time understands. Identity is commonly treated as an internal, something private, something chosen. This is an error. Identity is not what I claim, it is what persists. Repetition is the only mechanism that converts intention into form. A single action has no meaning. A pattern has definition. What I repeat stabilizes. What I do occasionally disappears. This is why aspiration is weak and structure is strong. The mind prefers stories, but reality responds to frequency. I am not shaped by insight. I am shaped by exposure. Thoughts come and go, but patterns remain. This makes identity impersonal and therefore accurate. If a behavior does not recur, it is not part of identity. If a trait cannot survive repetition, it is not real. This removes confusion. There is no need to ask who I am becoming. I am already visible. Repetition links evidence. This is uncomfortable because it removes ambiguity. There is no hidden self waiting to emerge. Only expressed behavior waiting to be acknowledged. Change is not transformation until repetition is replaced. Anything else is decoration. Identity is the residue of action compressed over time. This is why it resists sudden change and why it responds to structure. I do not attempt to reinvent myself. I adjust what I repeat. Everything else follows. Dominance is often confused with assertion. This confusion creates noise. Real dominance does not announce itself because it does not need confirmation. It begins internally as coherence. When thought and behavior are aligned, there is no instability. Instability seeks control. Stability exerts it naturally. This is why calm reorganizes environments without instruction. Dominance is not pressure, it is gravity. Pressure requires effort. Gravity requires mass. Internal order creates mass. When a person is regulated, others adjust unconsciously. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. Disorder reacts, order holds. Dominance is the ability to remain unchanged while influencing change. This does not require aggression. Aggression signals fragility. The need to overpower is evidence of internal fluctuation. Quiet dominance is restraint applied consistently, and is the refusal to be called into unnecessary motion. Position is established when predictability. Predictability builds trust. Trust creates influence. This is why consistency outperforms intensity and why presence outlasts performance. Dominance is not about imposing will, it is about making deviation inefficient. Once stability is established, others align or remove themselves. No instruction is required. Order spreads because it reduces friction. This is the nature of quiet dominance.
Power is commonly associated with force, with leverage, with advantage. This is superficial. Power begins as clarity. Without clarity, energy disperses. Attention fractures, decisions multiply, movement becomes inefficient. Confusion is not depth, it is congestion. The mind does not fail from lack of intelligence, it fails from excess input. When everything is allowed in, nothing is processed fully. Clarity is subtraction. It is the deliberate removal of what does not deserve access. This is why clarity feels rare. It requires exclusion. Most people avoid exclusion because it feels like loss. But nothing is lost, only noise. Attention is the gate, clarity is the filter. What passes through repeatedly shapes perception. Perception shapes response. Response shapes reality. This makes clarity a form of power, not because it dominates, but because it concentrates. A clear mind moves directly, it does not circle. It does not confuse complexity with importance or stimulation with relevance. When clarity is present, decision-making accelerates. Not because it is rushed, but because unnecessary options disappear. This is why clarity produces calm. There is less to evaluate, less to defend, less to maintain. Power feels quiet when nothing is competing internally. Clarity does not demand effort, it removes interference. Once interference is gone, action becomes obvious. Longevity is often treated as duration, as if survival were passive. This is incorrect. Longevity is a property of structure. What lasts is what can absorb variance. Fragility is not weakness. It is specialization without margin. Modern environments reduce friction and then misinterpret the resulting decline as inevitability. The body adapts. The mind adapts. What they adapt to becomes their limit. This makes resilience a design choice, not something hoped for, but something constructed. Survival is not reaction, it is preparedness. What cannot tolerate stress will eventually fail. This applies to systems, to habits, to identities. Strength that exists only under ideal conditions is not strength. It is dependency. To be built to last is to function across ranges, not at maximum output, but at sustainable output. Longevity is not endurance through force, it is endurance through compatibility. Compatibility with stress, with change, with boredom. This is why resilience feels unremarkable while fragility feels dramatic. The goal is not to avoid strain, but to remain operational under it. What survives longest is what wastes the least. Energy, attention, motion. Longevity is quiet efficiency extended over time. What lasts is what does not require rescue.
Thinking is often treated as abstraction, as something separate from survival. This is a mistake. In complex environments, the quality of thought determines viability. Survival is not only physical, it is cognitive. A confused mind consumes more energy, makes poorer decisions, and collapses under pressure. This is not a character flaw, it is a system failure. Intelligence is not accumulation, it is compression. The ability to reduce reality without distorting it. The mind that cannot compress overloads. Overload produces panic. Panic produces error. Clear thinking is therefore protective. It prevents waste. It prevents escalation. It prevents collapse. Education is not credential. It is internal order. A structured mind moves efficiently. It recognizes patterns. It anticipates outcomes. It avoids unnecessary motion. Ignorance is not neutral. It increases dependency. The less I understand, the more I rely on external systems. Reliance reduces optionality. Reduced optionality increases risk. This makes thinking a form of defense, not passive, not ornamental, active, continuous. continuous, essential. The mind that maintains order survives longer because it spends less and recovers faster. Thinking is survival, extended inward. Presence without performance influence. Influence is often misunderstood as display. This misunderstanding creates effort, and effort creates distortion. Presence is not something added, it is something revealed. It emerges when internal contradiction is removed. Performance is compensation for instability. When behavior is inconsistent, presentation becomes necessary. But when alignment is present, nothing needs to be projected. Presence is coherence. The mind is settled, the behavior is predictable, the standards are visible. This creates gravity. Others adjust, not because they are persuaded, but because stability reorganizes space. Charisma is not stimulation, it is reliability. The nervous system recognizes order before language does. This is why calm carries weight. Performance exhausts, presence endures. One requires constant maintenance, the other compounds. Influence that depends on effort disappears when effort stops. Influence that emerges from alignment persists. I do not seek to affect others, I seek to remain coherent. The effect follows. This is why true presence feels effortless and false presence feels loud. Nothing is pushed, nothing is sold. Alignment speaks without interruption.
Legacy is often confused with memory. Legacy is often confused with memory. This confusion makes it fragile. Memory depends on attention, and attention moves on. What remains is not what was noticed, but what continues to function. Legacy is consequence extended beyond presence. It is not created by intention or by recognition. It is created by structure. What persists is what was organized well enough to operate without reinforcement. Most actions disappear because they are isolated. They do not connect. They do not compound. Continuity is rare because it requires restraint. It requires the refusal to scatter effort. What remains is what was repeated within a stable framework. This applies to behavior, to ideas, to influence. Anything that relies on momentum alone eventually collapses. Legacy does not need witnesses, it needs durability. The future does not evaluate motives, it inherits outcomes. This makes legacy impersonal and therefore honest. I am not concerned with how I am perceived. I am concerned with what continues when perception is no longer involved. That is what remains. Immortality is often imagined as permanence of form. This is childish. Nothing permanent remains effective. What persists adapts. Immortality is not endless existence. It is uninterrupted relevance to last. Something must deserve to last. Time does not preserve everything, it preserves what aligns with its rules. Structure, efficiency, adaptability. Longevity without order is extended decay. To continue, I must maintain coherence. This applies to the body, which must be regulated. It applies to the mind, which must remain ordered. It applies to ideas, which must remain useful. Responsibility is the price of duration. Without it, everything degrades. Health is not appearance, it is maintenance.
Intelligence is not identity, it is upkeep. Legacy is not reward, it is obligation. Immortality begins when behavior is designed, not for attention, but for endurance. What survives is what wastes nothing. Energy, time, motion. This is not idealism, it is alignment. To last is to behave as if continuation matters. Because it does.